Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. This is my first time here, but I'm very excited to see this place. I didn't even know it existed, but in LA there's a lot of hidden gems, so alhamdulillah, it's good to be here, and it's good to get to know more of the Indonesian community. I'm sure that throughout Ramadan, all of you have been getting many reminders and about the significance of Ramadan and why it's important and what we're doing every day. And so I don't want to repeat a lot of things that many people already say. But my hope tonight, inshallah, is to maybe give us a better big picture of Ramadan, rather than focusing on some of the things that we commonly hear about. So, and also, inshallah, I hope that maybe we can make this a little bit more interactive. So I'd like to ask you some questions, and if you guys want to answer or feel like making any comments, please raise your hand and do so. So my first question is just to get my own bearings, which is to ask all of you, what do you guys think is the most important or main purpose of Ramadan? Why are we doing this? What's the big deal? Any ideas? To come closer to God, great. What else? That's actually one of the main points. If you want to even take the direct verse in the Quran, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyam kama kutiba alal ladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun." O you who believe, Allah has prescribed fasting for you as it was prescribed to those before you, in order that you achieve taqwa. And taqwa means God consciousness, or to come closer to God, basically. So that is the main purpose, right? All right. So why if our main purpose is to come closer to God, then what is the reason that we don't eat and drink? How does that bring us closer to God? What's the point of that? Oh, good. There's a mic out there. Anyone? So why if we're trying to come closer to God? Okay, so we can feel how the poor feel. So we're starving ourselves from food and drink to feel how the poor people feel. Oh, good, you're on. Okay, but so how does feeling how those less fortunate than us feel bring us closer to God? Right? Any clues? Any ideas? It's true, that's one of the reasons why we fast. We're trying to come closer to Allah in this month. Any ideas? Anybody? Going once? Going twice? Okay, it's all right. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of break down a human being for us from an Islamic perspective, right? We all know, who was the first human being that was created? Adam alayhi salam, right? So how was Adam alayhi salam created? Well, he's created from clay, right? He was made from clay. But Allah did not just take this piece of clay and put it on the earth, and now it's walking, talking, and moving, and speaking, and everything, right? So what happened? Allah took this clay and did what? I can't hear you. He created it. He created the clay. That's true. He made it in its mold and in its form, into that human shape. But then what happened? How does it come to life?
He gave it a spirit.
Who said that? All right, there. All right, nice. All right. So yes, he gave it a spirit. He gave it a soul. Allah blew His ruh, right, into that clay figure, and from that, Adam alayhi salam was created, right? And now he is a walking, talking human being. Now, can a human being exist without that ruh, that soul? No. If one of, we all know that, Allah created us, and one day we're going to die, and one day we're going to go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If Allah takes our soul away from us, Is there any way we can come back to life? Right, there's no way, once our soul is stripped from us, there is no way that we can come back to life, right? I even heard in a halaqah a long time ago, in a talk long time ago, some scholar was talking about how the Russians or some other country was trying to create a human being. You know, they're wondering, what is it that makes a human being, you know, work? I mean, if you break it down to a science, a human being is made of water, right? Hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, all these chemicals, right? So why can't we just get all these chemicals together and put it into a human form and try and make it into a human being? Maybe we can create our own human beings from a scientific perspective, right? Maybe to get it, you know, and so maybe we can create that clay form like Adam alayhi salam, but how do we bring it to life? So maybe maybe they thought we can just put some electric jolts into it, right? That's kind of like where the story Frankenstein came from, right? So why don't we just like shock it and maybe the electricity will make the thing come to life? But of course Frankenstein is a fiction, it's a fantasy, it's not real. So there was no human being brought to life from electricity alone, right? We can't come to life except from the soul that Allah puts into us, right? So now knowing that a human being is made of two parts, right? That physical part, that physical body, and the soul that's put into us. I want to kind of bring that back to Ramadan and the whole purpose of starving ourselves, not eating and not drinking during the day, but also the aspect of coming closer to Allah. And obviously when we're coming closer to Allah, especially in Ramadan, what are things that we're doing in Ramadan that we don't do in any other month to come closer to Allah? Besides fasting.
Pray Taraweeh.
Pray Taraweeh, right? You can drop the mic. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so yeah, you can pray Taraweeh, right? You can read Quran, right? We can go to talks like this. You guys are all here. This is not something you do every day, right? Or every weekend. So only in Ramadan maybe this happens, right? So we're all here to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are aspects that we're doing to come closer to Allah. The point I'm trying to bring between that human physical body and the soul is that both those things need nourishment. Both those things need a type of food, right? For our physical body to survive, we need food and drink. If we don't eat and we don't drink, our body's going to die, right? Yep. Likewise, our soul also, our spiritual soul needs nourishment. And if we don't feed that soul, right, that there's going to be a lacking in that. And it's going to be deprived of nourishment that it needs, right? And that's the side of coming closer to Allah. So what you have here is you have a scale, right? You have on this side, you have our food and drink, and on this side, you have our spirituality, our Iman, our Islam, our worship, right? And there's a constant balance going on. What's special about the month of Ramadan is that we are doing something that we are starving ourselves. You know, and on any other time of the year, we're allowed to eat and drink. It's not haram to eat and drink. We need to eat and drink. But Allah is making what is permissible for us not permissible during the day. He's intentionally starving us from food and drink, making this side of the scale go down so that what do you think happens on this side? This side is now much more apparent. It comes out. It's elevated. It's made clear. Now, you know, if people were just, you know, eating and drinking all day and just feeding that physical body, right? That's going to be way up there, and the soul is just buried and is not being nourished at all. This month, Allah is saying, I am going to level the playing field. And I'm going to make the spiritual side come out or become more developed and make it more apparent to us where we are. What is our level of Iman? Where are we at? Where do we stand with Allah? How do we come closer to Allah? Maybe the first step is to figure out where we stand with Him, right? So what happens when you stop eating and drinking? Right? Sometimes we get grumpy. You know, like when a baby, for example, doesn't get food, it starts to cry, right? So in an adult fashion, sometimes when we're not eating and drinking, you know, we snap at people quicker, or we get angry easier, or, you know, some of that attitude comes out. But if our spiritual side is in check, we're patient, right? We control our anger. We try and keep our cool. We know that our spirituality side is supposed to keep us in check. So the intention here was to hope to get you guys to understand or to see that, that this month of Ramadan is something special, where where Allah purposely tips those scales so that we can put more focus into the spiritual side of ourselves for a change, rather than just the physical side of ourselves, okay? So I don't know how much time I have left, but someone just keep tabs on me and make sure, because I tend to go until I'm dragged off, so yeah, okay. So with that being said, I wanted to talk to you guys tonight about the spiritual side, and how, inshallah, to try and understand what that spiritual side is, and inshallah, how to lift it up, how to raise it up, how to elevate that level of faith, that level of Iman that we all have. So I want to do this by talking about a hadith that is narrated by Umar radiallahu an. And the hadith is a well-known hadith. But it's a hadith it's a very long hadith, but it's an interesting story, and it's actually it's narrated as kind of like a mystery, where you don't really know what's going to happen until the very end. And I'm not going to read the entire hadith, but I'm going to read portions of it, and then I'll try and elaborate on some of the portions that we're going over. Okay? So the hadith begins that on the authority of Umar radiallahu an, who said, one day, while we were sitting with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there appeared before us a man whose clothes were exceedingly white and whose hair was exceedingly black, and no signs of journeying were on him, and nobody knew him. So let me stop right there. This is a small, thank you. So this is a small town, right? Medina is a small town. Everybody knows who everybody is, right? So if the companions were sitting with the Prophet ﷺ in a circle, if they were sitting in a circle, and all of a sudden a man that nobody knows comes out of nowhere and he starts approaching the Prophet ﷺ, everybody in that circle knows who everybody is in the town. They see that guy, they say, okay, well, I don't know who that guy is. You know who that guy is? No, I don't know who that guy is. Okay, well, he must be from out of town, right? This guy has to be from out of town. But there's something weird about this, because it says that this man appeared before us, and his clothes were exceedingly white, were really, really white. And his hair was really, really black, right? Now, what's weird about that? Well, if you're a traveler, and you come from out of town, that means you traveled, right? If you traveled, what are some signs of traveling? Dirt, right? You're going to be dusty. You're going to be dusty. Your clothes are going to have dust on it, right? Your hair might be disheveled and you know, blown away from the wind or whatever. But everything was crisp and clean, right? So if everything's crisp and clean, there's no way he can be a traveler. He can't be a traveler. Look at his clothes. They're fresh. But nobody knows who this guy is. So what's going on here, right? So who is this guy? So let me continue. So he walks up and he sat down by the Prophet ﷺ, resting his knees against his. Meaning the man came, sat down, and his knees were touching the Prophet ﷺ's knees. Okay? And let me go on. Okay. And his hands, and he placed the palms of his hands on his thighs. Okay? Do you guys, now this is kind of weird. Should I demonstrate this? Do you guys know can you guys get the imagery, or should I demonstrate this? You guys got it? Okay. So it's like the Prophet ﷺ is sitting, let's say if all the companions were sitting in a circle, and the Prophet ﷺ were sitting in a place similar to where I'm sitting now, this man comes out of nowhere, comes into the circle, sits right in front of the Prophet ﷺ with his knees touching the Prophet ﷺ's knees, and he has his hands on his thighs, meaning either his own thighs or the thighs of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay? Now, this is kind of weird because nobody knows who this guy is. So he's not, you know, and these companions are the closest people to the Prophet ﷺ, right? But someone would only do those actions if they were buddy-buddy, right? If they knew who each other are, right? You don't do that with anybody except someone close to you, right? Okay, so the companions are really confused. Like, what is going on here? So then the man says, O Muhammad, tell me about Islam. Okay? So the Prophet ﷺ responds with the 5 pillars. He says, Islam is to testify that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, to perform salah, to pray or to pay zakat, right? Charity, to fast in the month of Ramadan, and to make hajj or pilgrimage to the house if one is able to do so. Okay, now this is where it gets a little bit more puzzling. The man then says, correct, you have spoken the truth. Now, let's go over this. If the Prophet ﷺ is the most knowledgeable man out there about Islam, and some stranger who nobody knows comes up to the Prophet ﷺ, sits in front of him, asks him a question related to the field that the Prophet ﷺ is an expert in, gets an answer, and then says, yeah, you're right, that's the correct answer. How can he do that? How does he know the answer? He's the one asking the question, right? So the Sahaba are even more confused. The companions are even more confused by this, right? So then the man asks, tell me about Iman. Tell me about faith. And the Prophet ﷺ replies with the articles of faith, which are to believe in Allah, His angels, His books, His messengers, the last day, and to believe in divine destiny or qadr. It's like basically both the good and evil thereof. Basically that Allah is in control and has full knowledge over everything that has happened, that will happen, and that is currently happening. Right? So the past, the present, and the future. Right? Both the good and the bad, Allah has full knowledge of that. Okay? So faith is to believe in these things. Once again, the man says, yeah, that's right, that's correct, you've spoken the truth. So then the man asks, tell me about Ihsan. Ihsan translates to something like excellence. So what is like excellence? The Prophet ﷺ said, it is to worship Allah as though you are seeing Him, as though you see Him. And if you cannot see Him, know that He sees you. What do you think the man answered? Correct, you've spoken the truth. Okay, this is really confusing. Now there are more questions that are being asked after this, but I'm not going to go there because it's a very long hadith. But in the end, the man gets up and he walks away. And the companions are sitting there puzzled, like what's going on? And the Prophet ﷺ asks Umar ibn al-Khattab, he asks him, "Oh Umar, do you know who that questioner was?" And Umar replies, Allah and His Messenger know best. Like, I have no idea, right? And the Prophet ﷺ says, it was Jibreel, it was Gabriel alayhi salam, who came to teach you your religion. So Jibreel alayhi salam came in the form of a man to the Prophet ﷺ and asked these questions so that the answers of the Prophet ﷺ would teach the companions around them about their faith. Okay? Alright, so now I want to go back to these 3 questions. What is Islam? What is Iman? And what is Ihsan? So what was the answer to what is Islam? The 5 pillars, right? To the Shahada, right? Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To pray 5 times a day, to give zakat, to fast in the month of Ramadan, and to perform the Hajj, right? That's the answer to what is Islam. Okay? In other words, those 5 pillars, though, the purpose of those 5 pillars is really, that to me is kind of like that God consciousness. It's, if someone, think of it in terms of like a non-believer, someone who's not Muslim. If a non-Muslim learned about Islam to the point where he understood what it really means to be Muslim, it's kind of like, almost like understanding your purpose in this life. Like, oh, I get it. I know why I'm here now. There's only one God. And that Muhammad ﷺ is His messenger. And He came to teach us how to worship Allah, because that's why we're here. I get it now. And how do I worship Allah? How do I get closer to Him? I do that by doing these acts of worship, right? I pray 5 times a day. I give my zakat. I fast in the month of Ramadan. And I try to perform Hajj once in a lifetime. That's That's kind of like an awakening. I like to see that as an awakening. Like from a path that was astray, now I'm on the right path. I'm on Sirat al-Mustaqim, the straight path. Okay? So what was the answer to what is Iman? What is faith? What was the answer to that? A little bit tougher. Go ahead.
The 6 pillars of Iman.
Right, so the 6 pillars of Iman, or the articles of faith, right? To believe in Allah, His angels, His books, His messengers, the last day, right? Al-Akhirah, after we die, we're going to be resurrected. And Qadrullah, or the fact that Allah is fully aware and has all knowledge of all things past and present, right? Now, what's interesting about that, what the difference between Islam and the difference between Iman is taking Islam and going a step further. If I have my awakening of Islam, to get Iman, it's done through that. It's one step at a time. So I have to get to my Islam first, knowing what my purpose is, and then as I'm doing those acts of worship, the ideas of faith become more and more known to me, and more understandable, and more firm in my belief. Because if you look at it, Allah, His angels, His books, His messengers, can we see any of these things? Has anyone seen Allah lately? Has anyone seen the messenger, like Adam alayhi salam? Have we seen Adam or Ibrahim alayhi salam? Have we seen the books that were revealed to them? Have we seen it with our own eyes? Have we seen the last day? Have we seen the akhirah? Have we seen, are we even aware of all the knowledge that Allah, do we know what's going to happen in the future or the past? Do we know all of history? Do we know what's going to happen in the future? These are things that we cannot see, but we believe in it. We believe in it even if we cannot see it. That's Iman, that's faith, right? Now, what about Ihsan? What is Ihsan? Right? It's excellence, right? But what was the answer to that? What is excellence? It was to worship Allah as if you see Him. But if you cannot see Him, know that He sees you. Right? So it's kind of like, you know, like if someone walks into a store and they see something they really like and they don't have the money to buy it, and the idea of wanting to steal it comes into their mind, they remember, wait a second, Allah sees me. That's the second part. The first part is, everywhere I go, I know, it's as if I see Allah, meaning that I'm not even thinking about stealing, because I know, I see Allah, I understand that He's there, right? And if that awareness is not there yet, then at least I know that He sees me. So that's enough to keep me in check. Okay? So I'm sure I'm running out of time, but I want to close with a quick metaphor or a quick analogy to the stages of Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. Okay? What is submission? Islam is like peace or submission to the will of Allah. Iman, faith, and Ihsan, excellence. So the metaphor or analogy I want to give is the analogy of a puppet show. How does that work? No, trust me, it works. A puppet show. Who here has seen the Disney movie Pinocchio? Raise your hand. Okay, who here knows what a puppet looks like? Okay, great. Now, I'm not talking about like the Muppet Show, like Kermit the Frog type puppet, okay? I'm talking about like the Pinocchio type puppet, like the wooden puppet, right? The wooden dolls that has like the strings, right? You guys know what I'm talking about? The strings that are attached and you move the strings and the thing dances, right? Okay. So, how does that even relate to Islam, Iman, and Ihsan? Well, let's start with Islam. Islam, like I told you before, was like that awakening. It was that realization that I'm here for a purpose. And it's my purpose, I might have been, for a non-Muslim, let's say, he might have been raised in a country or a town or a place where if you're successful, you're famous. If you're successful, you're the richest guy on the block. If you're successful, you're driving the most expensive, the highest looking car, right? If you're successful, you have the most money in your bank account, whatever it is, right? Those are things that people today might define as successful, right? But as a Muslim, right, someone who enters Islam, They realize that their purpose in life is Allah. That's it. Is that I am submitting my will to Allah. So even though I want to be rich, even though I want to drive the best car, even though I want all these things, my first goal is to see what Allah wants for me first. Okay? So the analogy here is as if I went to a ticket booth and I bought a ticket to a puppet show. Okay? I went to the booth and I bought a ticket to see a puppet show. Now that ticket is like the shahada. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. Why? Because that ticket can only take me to a puppet show. Can I go to a football game with this ticket? Can I go to a basketball game with this ticket? Can I go to a soccer game with this ticket? No, I can't. This only takes me into a puppet show. Likewise, Allah is trying to tell us that in this life, your main goal is not to get rich. If Allah grants you blessings and wealth, that's okay. But your goal in this life is not to be rich. Your goal in life is to worship Allah. That's why you're here. So that ticket to the puppet show is kind of like Islam. Does that make sense? You guys with me? Yeah? Okay. Now let me continue. So you buy this ticket, and now you go to the theater, and you have on your ticket where you're seated in the theater, right? Well, the next step is Iman, is faith. So basically, let's say your seat is in the very back, at the very top of the theater, okay? When you're looking down at the stage and you see Pinocchio or those puppets dancing on stage, right? Is that real? Is that a real person that's dancing on stage, that puppet? Is that real? It's not real, right? I know it's not real, but when I'm sitting way, way, way back there, can I see the strings? Can I see like the bolts? Can I see like the thing it's made, the wood? Can I see the wood and the jaw and all the little cracks? Can I see those things? I can't. Right? So it's kind of like I entered Islam and then I went to the theater and I'm sitting in the way back and I know the reality of this world. The reality of this world is that this is a temporary one and the akhirah is where it really counts. Right? Heaven or hell, Jannah or Jahannam is where it really counts. But even though I can't see it yet. So maybe I'm waking up every day, I'm going to school, I'm going to work, and I know I'm Muslim. I know about my beliefs. But the big picture doesn't really I don't see it yet. I know that it's there. I know there's an akhirah. I know when I die, Allah is going to bring me back to life, but I don't really see it yet. That's like sitting in the way back that you know that puppet show is fake, but you can't see the strings, right? Okay, but what about if you're seated farther and farther up? Are you able to see those strings now? If you're sitting farther and closer up? What if you have front row seats? Right? You can see, that's wood, there's strings right there, I can see the dude with his hands, I can see everything now, I'm in the front row, right? That's kind of like my Iman, my faith has increased because the idea of believing in Allah, His books, His angels, His messengers, it's all becoming more and more clear to me now as I learn about them. Okay? Now, finally, as I'm moving closer up, that's like my faith is increasing. Now we're talking about Ihsan. Now we're talking about like the cream of the crop. The people that are like on top of it, they know what's up. They worship Allah as if they see Him, and if they cannot see Him, they know that He sees you. Right? So what is that in the puppet show? Well, every puppet, we know that puppet there is fake. We know that puppet is not real. We know the dunya, this life, is not the real life. The real life starts after our death. Right? But we also know that even though we cannot see Allah, even though we cannot see what is controlling that puppet, we see strings, but do we see who's moving those strings? Can we see who's moving those strings? We can't, right? But we know every puppet has a puppet master. Right? Every puppet has a puppet master. So every human being, everything of creation has a creator. Right? Everything in creation has a creator. And that is, that understanding, the more we're able to understand what is at the end of those strings up there, is the more we're able to have that excellence in our faith. That idea that we worship Allah as if we see Him. I can practically see that puppet master up there. But even though I can't see him, I know that he sees me. Does that make sense? Okay, so with that, I know I probably went way over time, but you guys didn't pull me off, so I told you what was going to happen, right? So inshallah, I hope that we all benefited from this, myself included, and inshallah, I hope that this Ramadan, we're able to really take that scale of Iman, that scale of our soul and our faith, and really increase that in this month, when Allah is making us starve our physical body in order to increase our spirituality, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك